Welcome back, guys, to another episode. In the last episode, we looked at the pros of doing a master's degree in the UK. Now, in this episode, I'm going to go down into the numbers of what it's like as an outcome from doing a master's degree in the UK, but also compare that to what it's like doing a graduate degree. What salary can you expect, and how is that going to rise over time? I'm also going to deep dive into the cumulative profits of doing a master's degree, and also compare that with doing an MBA at a certain point in your career down the line. So let's go into the numbers. So on this first slide, I've got a salary comparison of a non-graduate versus a graduate versus a postgrad in the UK. Now, I will admit there's a few assumptions that I've had to use here. First of all, I've had to assume that there's a 5% salary increase for all three of these categories every year. Now, your mileage may very well vary compared to that. You may be very good at piling on a 10% to 30% pay rise every year. But when I checked what the national average is, it's something around 5%. So let's use that as a comparison for all three of these categories. And the other thing you're going to notice is that a non-graduate has started working at quite an earlier age compared to the other two categories. So they have already reached a point of 20,000 of a salary way before the graduate and the postgrads will have reached. There's also another assumption here that the postgraduate degree is being done right after the graduate degree, which is also the reason for why the graduate is starting quite late, which is also a reason why the postgraduate is starting at a later date. So if we look at these numbers, they don't tend to tell us so much about what's going on, but if we switch to a postgraduate accumulated profit after tax, that's a long one, versus a graduate, you can now see that in year 3 and 4, there's this massive spike downwards to about minus 30 to minus 35K. The reason for that is that there's an opportunity cost for doing a master's degree in the UK after your bachelor's. If you've done a 3-year bachelor's degree, you have to consider the fact that for one more year, if your degree is one more year, you will not be making the same amount of salary that a graduate will have started making. So that's why you see this difference. It's basically an opportunity cost. It's a way of weighing what it would be like doing a graduate degree and what it's like doing a postgraduate degree. So that is why you see this massive spike back up to a difference of around 3,000 in the first year after a postgrad degree, and that makes its way up to over 5,000, but it stays below 10,000 in postgrad accumulated profit. What that means to say is that you never reach a point of making more than £6,000 to £7,000 a year after getting a master's degree in the UK, unless obviously your mileage is varying and you're much better, and or you've done a master's degree that pays much better than an average master's degree, for example. These are figures that I'm using, by the way, that are off Google. They are based on reports done in the UK through studies conducted by the government. So I'm not going to argue with the numbers. They are assumptions. There are a few assumptions that I've made here, like the 5% growth rate. We always have to make some sort of assumption to get these numbers. So I'm going to stick with the numbers that I've done. If we move on to the cumulative profits here, you can notice immediately that there's a massive decrease in the cumulative profits after year 3. The reason, once again, is the opportunity cost. The income that the person didn't make after choosing to go down the route of getting a master's degree will have accumulated in terms of a negative figure. So what I've done here is to show that negative figure can be recovered over time. Again, I have made an assumption that this is not invested in anything that beats inflation. So basically you can assume that you're going in terms of the inflation rate over time. But what it goes to show is that if you do nothing different from somebody with a bachelor's degree, it will take about 12 to 13 years for you to break even, for you to make up the cost of doing that master's degree. And again, I think what this goes to show is the importance of that salary that people make in their 20s and 30s, and those pay rises. They make a much bigger difference in the overall life and investments and assets of a person than does, for example, making £2,000 to £5,000 more in pay package. Now on this next graph, I've got something more interesting where I'm looking into the salary of an MBA versus a graduate. Now for this one, I've made an assumption that the person is getting an MBA at year 7. After 7 years of their career, they've decided to do an MBA. This is pretty typical in the UK. And again, another assumption is that this MBA is lasting 1 year and it costs about £60,000 and about £15,000 of costs for living I've added there. That's rental, food, and other things. That's probably not a lot of spending. A lot of people might be spending way more than that during their MBA, but I have to assume something, so I've used £75,000 here. And what you'll notice after that is that the salary of the MBA will go up to about £60,000 to £70,000 right after the MBA is done. This is pretty typical for, I have chosen Cambridge Judge Business School. It's a published figure for the public, so you can go and check out what on average somebody that has an MBA from Cambridge earns. So I use this figure. Of course, your mileage may vary, and it also depends on which industry. It does depend on which industry you pick to go down the route of, but this is fairly typical, you can assume. Now, another thing is this 70,000 is comprised potentially of a salary, but also other benefits like stocks or bonuses. So once again, there are some assumptions that I have to make here, but it's good to be able to pinpoint one particular number to compare against a graduate. What you will find is that the pay increases much more rapidly because we are increasing on a percentage basis afterwards. So while the graduate has reached a point of 33.5k, this MBA candidate who's just finished their degree has reached a point of 73k already. So you can see how very rapidly this negative figure improves itself going forward. Now, I will move on to the cumulative profit, which I think makes a lot more sense to me when I evaluate an opportunity cost. And what this goes to show, once again, assuming 0% interest on money, it does go to show that it can take quite a long time to recover all of your money once you spent it on a big educational program like an MBA that costs quite a significant amount of money, not just in the UK, but also in the US and the rest of the world. And in my assumption, it takes 11 years. It takes year 11 of your career to reach a point of breaking even. What that means is that from year 8 of that debt that you piled on, and again, assuming that you have no interest on that debt, it will have taken you at least 3 to 4 years to recover that amount back. And this also assumes that you're not investing that money. If you're doing a graduate degree and you're making more money than an MBA, it's assuming that you're not investing that money into something that's making more. So yeah, there are a few assumptions. You have to keep those in mind, but it does take into account the tax rate, which goes up as you earn more and more money. So simply looking at the income figures for comparison isn't very wise, because what you'll find is once you've reached a category of 40% or 45% of tax in the UK, you're probably not making as much money as you would have expected to make. So it is important to put those into your model, which I've done here. And what you will find is for a 20-year career, if you're deciding to do an MBA at year 7, so that gives you about 13 years for your 20-year long career to recover as much of the costs that you can recover, it will probably reach around 300k at least in profits. So what that means is that the MBA has paid you 300k more on top of the expenses that you had made during the MBA program. This is one of the reasons why a lot of people choose to do an MBA program, not just in the UK, but around the world, especially in the US. Now, the costs for doing an MBA in the US are much different from what we've seen here. You can expect it to be almost double for the top 10 business schools, but equally the profits, the income that you can expect after the MBA is also probably around 50 to 100% more than what you're seeing here from the UK. So if you factor those costs in, you're playing a different game in the US. You're potentially playing an even different game if you're gonna go back to Asia after your MBA has finished. And this is what you can expect from a career in the UK. I hope this was really helpful. If you want to see anything else similar to this in the future, let me know in the comment section below and I will very gladly make a video on that. I'll see you next time. Bye.